Well, good morning everyone. This is a Tuesday morning art group live session, and we're studying a loose line and wash style, and I've chosen a particularly interesting photograph which is in Italy, and it's this lovely building here with some washing hanging across the front of it and lots of really interesting features. So we'll need to start with a piece of watercolour paper like this, a horizon line about a quarter of the way up, and a square like this just right of centre, which represents the front square of this building. So from there it's just a case of putting in the rest of the features. So for example, there's a fall pipe coming down here. We know there's a window here with shutters, so we can put that in, and if the sizes of these are different to what they are on the photograph, it really doesn't matter. We're not looking for accuracy in terms of the actual sizes of everything. We're just looking for a really interesting line and wash study. So it's just a case of getting this drawing completely done. Try not to put too much detail in with the pencil, because all of this has got to be erased later. We're going to overmark this with a Unipin pen and get a lot of stylish marks on. So all of this pencil is going to be erased, so let's not waste too much time by doing too much detail with the pencil. So as you can see, I've just sketched in the basic shapes of everything in my composition, not too much detail at this stage. The foliage in this top right hand corner is going to overhang here, so we don't really need to draw any features here. I'm going to have a bit of foliage overhanging this side, but just for interest, instead of having this lamp on the wall here, I'm going to have a lamp post, and I'm going to plonk a lamp post right in the middle of this pavement here. I'm going to have it rising up above, and this just adds a little bit of interest to the whole composition. There it is. I might do that a little bit bigger when I draw it with the pen. There we are. So I'm going to put a lamppost there. I'm also going to have, just behind it, coming out the top of this building and leaning, of course, it all makes the thing much more interesting, I'm going to have a telegraph pole there. I'm going to dangle some wires to the building from it. All adds to the fun and the interest of the picture. And then of course I've got the washing line. Now I've decided, for a bit of fun, that this washing line is attached to the underside of the window here, comes out to this fall pipe here, and then for a bit of comedy I'm going to have it being attached to the lamppost like that there. So it asks the question, how on earth does anybody get washing on the washing line? But it just makes it very interesting. So let's have some sheets and items of clothing hanging from the washing line, different lengths, different widths and sizes. And then we can have some here as well. I've also decided to put a human figure in here, and I'm going to stand him right in front of this doorway, because this doorway is really dark. So if I put a human figure in here, I'm going to stand him, I'm just going to draw a carrot right there, look, and a little dot for the head. I shall expand on that when I use the pen. Right, so I'm now going to introduce the pen. This is a Unipin fine liner, black ink, and it's a 0.6. This is a 100% waterproof pen, so I know this won't leak when I put the paint on later. So it's just important, I think, to get the foreground features drawn on first. Now this foliage is overhanging the building, so I don't want to draw the lines of the building and then have those visible behind the foliage. So I just need to choose where the foliage is falling, and it's up to you how you represent the foliage. I quite like the idea of just producing these sort of almost hand-like scribbles like this. And it's interesting because even though it might not look ridiculously like foliage at this stage, when you put green paint on later, it will. So there we go, there's a series of scribbles. I'll do a little bit more of that on that side, and I want a little bit hanging in as well from this side, like this. They're just like little scribbly shapes, like that. I'm going to put my person in, so I'm just going to expand on that a little. We'll just give him some square shoulders, and I'll just give him a sort of coat and a jacket. See if I can just split that into two legs there. There we go, and that's probably enough just to represent a human figure in there. Now then, how about drawing style? Well, drawing style, it's just a case of getting the lines in, and I love shutters on windows because you can just represent them with a series of horizontal lines like this. It might be an idea to get this washing in first, and this washing line, because that's in the foreground. And then we can make this look like clothes and sheets and things hanging from the line, like that. Full pipe there. And as far as brickwork and stonework is concerned, I think it's really important to keep that to a minimum. So, for example, on the edge of the building here, I can just draw in some sort of basic stone shapes, maybe around the windows as well, just here and there, just representing this sort of stonework. Really effective without having to draw all of it. There we go, there's my doorway, and we can put some stonework either side of the doorway like this. So I'm going to progress this drawing onwards, and we'll keep going, and then we'll put some paint on once we've got the drawing done. Right, that's it, that's all drawn up, and as you saw on the video there, I've erased all of the original pencil, so I've got this lovely strong ink drawing. So I'm now going to apply some paint. I'm going to use cerulean blue for the sky. I'm going to use the Mini Hake, which is this 3/4 inch goat hair brush, and I'm just going to fill that up with water and put some water across the whole area of the sky, coming down over the building and over the trees, just a little bit more. So I'm just looking for a nice even film of water up there. I'm going to just push the brush now into the cerulean and just flick it into the area of the sky quite patchily, like this, leaving a few white gaps. Hopefully will look like clouds. And I'm going to leave that to settle. That looks pretty good up there now. And now I'm going to immediately wash the brush, and I'm going to wet this area across the pavement. Might as well get straight on with it. And I'm going to use a little bit of Payne's Grey, a very small amount of Payne's Grey. And I'm just going to flick that across this area of the pavement. So I want that to be really pale, because there's the sun is shining right across this pavement, and the weeniest amount of burnt umber as well. It just gives it a lovely variegated sort of soft finish, but I want this to look as if it's in sunlight. We're going to put some strong shadows on later, so I'm going to make sure I don't overdo the colour of the pavement. So that's first phase, and I'm going to dry that off. Right, I've got a little bit of loose raw sienna on the palette here, a little bit of loose burnt umber, and I'm going to put the paint on the buildings just with these two colours. Remember, this is the front face of the buildings, this is in sun, we're going to put shadows on later. So I'm going to use a technique which I've used many times before. I call this following the bead. So I'm using a number 8 spearhead brush. I'm filling that up with water, picking up a small amount of the raw sienna. I'm going to start on this chimney, just loading the paint. I'm going to go back to the palette and just sort of plop a little bit more in so that it starts to run down and forms a bead across the bottom edge. So the wetter you can keep this, the better. And as you can see, I've just avoided that bit of foliage there. So I've gone to the palette about 4 times, picked up a bit of raw sienna, a little bit more water in the brush, and that forms this lovely bead across the bottom. I'm working on a gentle slope, and it means I can just guide that down like this, and as you can see, it's very easy, it just flows down, and I can just keep adding to that. And I'm going to come right across this building because it's the same colour, keep adding water and adding raw sienna all the way across like this. And then what I'm going to do, now I've got to there, this is still wet up here, so I'm just going to dip into the burnt umber and just sort of flick a little bit of burnt umber in here and there as well. A little bit too much there, let me just dissipate that a little bit. And that burnt umber should, well, I don't know what the word is, it variegates with the raw sienna, gives you that lovely multicoloured tone, and it should also granulate a little bit as well. So I'm just going to keep dipping the brush in, adding more water, more paint to this bottom edge here. And it's lovely, the paint will just follow me down the page, and every so often I'm going to have to go around the washing, try and keep the washing white if I can. A little bit more of the burnt umber. And it should dissipate and leave you that, like I said, that lovely multicoloured finish. Okay, that's all done, and the front face of the buildings is all painted. I'm just going to use a little bit of burnt sienna now and just flick a little bit of this onto these pan-tiled roofs here. That's a lovely colour, really helps the painting to pop. And if you leave a few little white gaps here and there, that doesn't really matter. It actually adds a little bit of sparkle to the painting. Right, now I'm going to tackle the shadows. Now, what's really important is that we don't get these too pale and we don't get them too dark. I'm just going to use some Payne's Grey. I've got a piece of test paper here. I've got some Payne's Grey on the palette here, look. It's quite loose, it's quite a nice puddle of it there. And I've got a number 6 spearhead brush here, and I want to create shadows. That's probably not quite dark enough, just add a tiny bit more paint to that. That's a little bit darker there, so that's about right. So the shadows on the photograph, the reference photograph I'm working from, are very complicated. So what I've decided to do is kind of simplify them as best I can. So we're going to have a little shadow. I'm going to start over on the left here. We'll have a shadow underneath this gutter, like that, which will come all the way across there, and a little flash of a shadow coming down across the front of the building there as well. And then a shadow underneath this gutter, and it just comes in at a slight angle. All the way across there. And the shadow is very often a little bit darker immediately under the overhang, where there's a little bit less ambient light. So I've just dipped the tip of the brush into some slightly stronger Payne's grey. I've just run it along there while that's still wet to try and strengthen the depth of the shadow that little bit higher up, and it should just bleed into the paint below. This offshot here is slightly recessed behind that one, so I'm going to put a shadow there, and that'll just help bring it out. There we are. And I want to put the steps in shadow as well, partly. So that top one's fully in shadow, and I'm just going to sort of half paint a shadow onto the steps. Hopefully it'll look like the sun is catching the outside edge of the steps. And then there might be a little shadow just there at the back of the steps coming away there. Any more shadows anywhere? Right, I'm going to put a shadow on the washing. This is quite intricate, so I'm going to put a little shadow there for that one. And round the back of these, this hanging washing. So that's to the bottom right hand corner of those. This one, this washing line is starting to move away from the wall, so this one might cast a shadow there. But this one probably doesn't now. So I'm just going to put the shadows on those there. And while I'm at it, while I'm putting shadows on, I'm just going to strengthen the Payne's grey a little. So this human figure is going to be a shadow there. And this plant stand, that will have a shadow. And of course the lamp post is going to have a long shadow, which comes all the way in between the two. Strike that out of the picture, and that immediately brings the sunshine into the picture. And with that same Payne's grey, I'm just going to paint the central part of my plant stand, and I'll put a little bit of darker paint on the right hand edge of that. I think that's all the shadows for the moment. That's really important that that dries off now, and so that I can get some of the finishing touches on. While I've got this number 6 spearhead in my hand, and I'm using the Payne's grey, I'm going to use a stronger mix of the Payne's grey now. Just want to get the right hand side of this lamp post in, put a little bit of paint on that just to enhance the strength of that. The right hand edge of my plant stand, or water fountain, or bird bath, whatever that might be. I'm also going to just put a little bit more on the windows here and there, just to darken them. I know I did it all with the pen earlier, but sometimes a little bit of extra paint can just help bring them out a little bit. The shutters I'm going to do with burnt umber shortly, but this is the most important one now. This is that doorway, which is really dark. So I'm using some really strong Payne's grey, and I'm going to very carefully leave a little halo around my human figure as I paint down. A little bit of burnt sienna on the plant pots, just to give them a little bit of colour. Might just leave the left hand side a little white flash. Like that. I'm going to put a few creases in the washing with the Payne's grey. Decide which ones of these are going to be white. Let's have those, leave those 3 white there, and then I might have some different coloured washing. How about a bit of burnt sienna on one of them, and then a bit of cerulean blue perhaps, that one, another one up there, And I've got a little bit of alizarin crimson on my palette here, so why not use a little bit of that on one of those. And I might put my human figure in cerulean blue. Just leave the shoulders white, like that, and maybe just some darker coloured trousers. A little bit of Payne's grey. Again, leaving a little light flash down the outside like that. As I said before, the shutters I'm going to do with burnt umber. So I'll run a little bit of colour onto those. Again with the Spearhead number 6. Right, I'm going to finish off this lovely little study with some greenery. So I've put out a blob of lemon yellow here and another one here. So I'm going to get in lots and lots of water into this one and add a little bit of ultramarine, just a small amount. There's the ultramarine, look. And that will turn that into a lovely light sort of lime green. And then with the other one, I'm not going to have quite as much water because I want this to be thicker. And a lot more of the ultramarine, and this will give me a really rich dark green. So there needs to be a sort of quite a significant difference between the two greens, not just in colour but also in consistency. So this one's really loose and runny, and this one's much thicker. Okay, I've just splashed a little bit of water on my sky there. Let me just get rid of that. Right, I'm quite simply going to use the number 8 Spearhead brush and fill up the brush with loads and loads of that light green, and I'm going to, I call this bobbling basically, where you just pop the brush up and down in quick succession and it creates lots of white spaces but also this sort of impression of leaves on the trees. So if we just get in the lighter green, while that's wet, we then just turn to the dark green and start chucking that in with the tip of the brush and just allowing it to bleed and blend into the lighter green. And then we can use some of that dark green to perhaps produce a few individual little blobs coming over the building. You won't be able to do that with the lighter green because it won't be strong enough. But that darker green, you can produce a few overhanging individual leaves, which always looks really effective. And then go back, wash the brush and continue with the light green. So the reason I've done that is I didn't want this light green up here to dry before I put the dark green in. So I'm sort of doing it in sections. So that's that bit, and again the dark green. So you can see straight away that this dark green, the thicker consistency of it, allows some of the lighter green still to shine through. It doesn't all mix into the light green. Well, I thought I'd finish that off, and I've already signed it, but then I took another look at it and decided I wanted a little bit more depth in this corner. So I'm actually just going to use the Payne's grey again and my number 6 Spearhead brush, and I'm going to paint a dappled shadow coming in from the left. Maybe there's a tree or something like that over here. So if I just pull a shadow in fairly solid from the left here, and then I'm going to start to break it up and just paint little squiggles, and that will look like a dappled shadow of a tree or a shrub or something like that, where the light's just coming through the leaves. And I think that just adds a little bit more depth to the foreground. So that's definitely it this time, and I look forward to doing another video for you in the future. Goodbye for now.